Hello everyone, this is Kale, and I wanted to make a very brief tutorial on how to add a simple light and dark mode to pretty much any website or web app. And this is going to switch based upon the system settings. So this will work on the system settings of a mobile device or a desktop. Um, yeah, so let's look at it. I set up a very basic demo of this on the old Microsoft Edge browser here. So I can go to the settings and change the theme to dark, and you can see it just switches the text and background color here. Now, the way that you're going to want to do this is following this guide on web.dev. Um, I'll have this link in the description. It's a really good guide. It talks about it talks about the reasons for why we might want automatic switching for dark mode and things like that. But it also offers some really good, just plain web technology code samples here. And that's what we're going to use for this example. So I took a lot of the example code here, put it in the old VS Code. Basically, what this relies on is the prefers color scheme media query in your index.html file. And then on top of that, it's going to use something called CSS variables, which are pretty ubiquitous at this point. All the major browsers support CSS variables. It's a really simple way to add multiple themes. So let's look at the code for this very simple example. I'll just turn on the VS Code here. Let me bump that up. All right, so we can see in the code here, I have my index.html, and here's the very basic body text here, introduction, hello, etc. And up here is the code from the web.dev article. I took out a lot of the comments, but basically the majority of the code is right here, where it's going to say, all right, if the browser says, it's in dark mode, right, then pull in this dark.css. If it is no preference or it prefers light mode, then pull in the light CSS. Now, these two files are going to contain your CSS variable definitions, and then your main style sheet here, this is going to be pulled in no matter what. Now, this is going to actually implement the CSS variables in these files, okay? So what you're going to want to do then is in your CSS folder here, you have your main sheet here, and then you're going to want to create your dark and light CSS as well. So you can see that the dark and light CSS, all this really does is define your variables. Okay, so in the light one, we're going to have a light background and a dark text color. Okay, and then in the dark one, we're going to have a dark background and a light text color. Okay, but notice that these are both the same variable names, right? In both light and dark, we have background color and then text color. And then in the main style sheet, you're actually going to implement these here, background color and text color, right? And just as an example, I showed, for example, you can have some text here that doesn't change, right? I might want this to be green all the time, okay? So hopefully this makes sense. You have your background and text implemented, and then when you go back to your website here, let me demonstrate how this switches again here. So we can go to light in our browser, and then it's going to automatically update there. And on mobile, this typically works automatically as well, but you might have to do a little browser refresh if you're on a mobile device, but on desktop it's very, very quick. So you can see that the variables get implemented here, and we can see if this is implemented over in the color here. So you can see that it brings this in. over here, and then we'll switch it again back to dark. There we go, and it flip-flops there. And I typically go with not quite black and not quite white, just because it is a little bit easier on the eyes typically. So that's the gist of it. Hopefully that makes sense. It really is quite simple. When you look at the code, one other thing about the code is that up at the top you're going to have this color scheme, light, dark. This isn't quite ready for prime time yet, but it's a good thing to put in from that web dev article, because it will be implemented in the future where the browser will be able to pick up this information and know that this website has two color themes, right? Light and dark. So that's the gist of it. Now, one thing I wanted to walk through as well is, how might you implement this? How might you implement this on an existing website or web app, right? So I went ahead and did this the other day, and granted, a lot of developers might not appreciate this kind of pull request on their work, but for example, in Iris Messenger here, I implemented this light dark mode switching in exactly the same way that I just outlined. So it initially had the style sheet, right? Just one style sheet. And so naturally I added a dark and a light style sheet as well, just like I said. And what I wanted to do there is I started to gather general color information from the primary style sheet. Let me go back to that. From the primary style sheet. So for example, if I notice that all of the color, for example, this website is typically going to be, most websites are going to be light mode by default. So if you go through and you look, okay, this text color is that, I'm going to replace it with this variable. You want to start to pull in colors into your light.css first. Okay, because that's going to be the theme that already exists, and then after you do that, you're going to want to copy all of this and paste it into the dark.css, and then start altering the colors here. So yeah, and then you start to pull in all of your variables here, right? Replacing the hex codes or RGB values with your variables, just like you can see I did there and there. And I went ahead and did this for a lot of things. And then, of course, in the index.html, you're going to want to add that code in that does the switching for you, right? This is where it detects the prefers color scheme value. So the end result of that is from the light mode, I added the dark mode there. Now, the nice thing about these variables, these CSS variables, is, if you don't like this green color, let's say you want it to be a little bit more neon, a little more bright, you can just go into the dark.css file, right? And you can go ahead and change, let's see, whichever one it is. I think it's our message. Go ahead and change that hex color, and it's going to adjust the dark mode green value for that our message color. So it makes things pretty nice. You only have to change a color in one area, and it takes care of it because you've already linked your variables in your style.css. So that's pretty much it. Just wanted to make a quick video about that. Hopefully that helps some people. Let me know if you have questions. If you don't like the automatic switching based upon the prefers color scheme attribute there are libraries that exist that can do this switching for you. I don't typically like to pull in libraries unless they're handling some super complex behavior, and this is simple enough that you can do it on your own in plain code. But some of those libraries do include nice little buttons, like a theme switcher button, so somebody can choose which theme they want. like a little moon or a little sun icon that can switch it back and forth, for example. Yeah, that's it though. Let me know if you have questions. Thanks. Bye.